I'm doing a little question here. What is wrong with wrinkles on human beings? Let's see here. What is wrong? WRINKLES. Wrinkles on humans. Done. Okay. Start the Q&A. Okay, so we've got this up here. What is wrong with wrinkles on humans? And um, you know, I ask these questions simply because I think that all of this should be normal. And so instead of focusing on all these things of how we can fix something, that we should just look at ourselves as being normal the way we are. Now, if you want, now the thing I will say is there's some products that I actually like, like hand lotion. It just makes me feel good a little bit sometimes, and it smells good. It's an alternative to perfume. So I actually like, you know, hand lotion. Stereotypically in the past, it had been pretty inexpensive. I remember the back in the day when we used to be able to get it for maybe about $1, and I think now it's crept up to, maybe $4, $4 or $5, which that is kind of expensive. If we had to fill our car up, this is something I think about with gas prices. If we had to fill our car up with hand lotion, we would be spending a lot of money. It would be, my gosh, we're not even getting a gallon of hand lotion for $4. So gas at sometimes is like $4 a gallon, but hand lotion is more or less around $4 for maybe 8 ounces for a bottle, 8 to 16 ounces, just depending on what type you buy. So, so I'm addressing the issue of wrinkles and aging gracefully. Now, one of the things I wanted to say is that I have had wrinkles throughout my whole life. When I was a child, I had wrinkles. And our teacher had us looking at our fine wrinkles on our skin when we were a child. We had a magnifying glass for that purpose. Yes, I can say Jesus is king. Absolutely. Jesus is king. Um, CJV00488BAR11. Absolutely. You're welcome. You're welcome. Jesus is king. And, so, I call my wrinkles character marks, character spots. And, for me, I was not someone who could afford makeup throughout my life. You know what I'm hearing right now, too, from the celebrities doing interviews? There's quite a few of them, especially the ladies speaking out about it. And it's so refreshing to hear them speaking out about it. What makes a person a good person? I know uh, that's the whole point. I get that. What makes a person a good person? There is no gauge or metric of what a good person is. Um, I do have a belief in humans that humans can be good. Good is something where you are not harmful to someone else on purpose. Or that's kind of how I look at it. You're not doing things to harm someone else on purpose. And so I like to look at that on both the physical harm side and also the side of harming people monetarily, because that's something that we have to deal with now is monetary harm and pain and suffering. So I had always asked the question, how do you prove pain and suffering? Well, pain and suffering, court systems don't like to look at pain and suffering. They'll look at pain and suffering as in, if you're in an automobile accident and you're injured in that way, as pain and suffering. They don't look at homelessness as pain and suffering. They don't look at starvation or lack of food because of money as pain and suffering. They don't look at withholding money as pain and suffering from a person, or inflation as pain and suffering from a person. So I'm going to take this in a whole different direction, that the court system doesn't look at things as in pain and suffering for a person. So a lot of people will say things like, well, think positive. Just think positive about things and it will get better. And it's like, well, how do we just make money get better when we need money to survive? And millions of us in the United States are not part of cryptocurrency. We are not part of a system where we just have easy access to money. And and so we can think positive all day long. We can try and try and try and hope things change and get better. But unless there is real effective change within our society, I mean, this is systemic discrimination, then my gauge and metric of the United States military and people being homeless, unfortunately, then Wall Street and cryptocurrency and the monetary system in the United States is always evading us because it's moving so fast that it's leaving millions of people behind, is what's taking place. Let's see. So, okay. Henri Pest 27. Thanks for this life lesson. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. I thank you for asking. Because, your age doesn't matter, but I just wanted to say that with age, we see repetition of trends and cycles take place throughout your life, and you'll see it too. When you get to be in your 40s, you're going to understand, on towards your 40s, you're going to remember things, and especially with this age and social media, the trends and things repeat. My daughter taught me a lesson. I think it was about 10 years ago. And we were on Facebook. That's when I still had Facebook. And she taught me a huge lesson related to trends. And she wrote on Facebook, she says, "Why is Disney just repeating the same movies over and over again?" Which I knew that I didn't really know that they were at that time, because I had the old-fashioned favorite Snow White movie that I liked to watch. And so this is just the entertainment cycle. This is something that we all say is not important and it's mundane, and that it's just, this is just the entertainment side. So she was teaching me something that she was noticing on her end. So before, when I was younger, okay, we had Snow White that was on the Sunday night movie. So we didn't have any way to watch Snow White in the house at all. So the first time I ever saw Snow White, I think, was at the movie theater. Then they had it on TV. And then later on in the 1980s, when they came out with the VCR, we had the VCR. And then Disney came out with the Snow White collectibles, and they said it had been revamped up and it had been refreshed, and it was a lifetime collectible. They'll sell it one time and then you'll never be able to get a hold of it again. But it was a VHS edition, a collectible for Disney, and they did that with all of their movies. So they resold the same movies that had already been shown in the theater. They were selling them to a whole new generation. And I know there's some actors and entertainers who are going to agree with me on this because they saw it too. And then they did the same thing with the DVDs and the CDs. They did the same thing with both of them. So they were reaching new generations of people with the same movies. Well, then chimes in my daughter, who's a millennial, and she's like, well, why is Disney just remaking the same movies now? Well, she missed out on that part because she was a little bit younger. I I never asked the question of, well, why is Disney just selling the same movies to people? Because the thing is, for me, I liked watching I thought, well, it'd be kind of fun to have it in the house too. It's a favorite for me. I'm gone away from home. It's a favorite from the childhood, to be able to have a favorite movie to watch. And you've got it kind of in a collection. And I wasn't questioning that about the marketing aspect or just selling the same movie. So my generation, we were a little bit more, I wasn't thinking about that aspect. It's like they're just putting the same movie in different packaging. That's all they did was Disney put the same movie, Snow White, the cartoon, in different packaging. Well, then eventually they did come up with some new movies. I don't know if they redid Cinderella. I haven't kept up on everything, but they created some new movies, and I knew they were taking some of them from some of those Brahms lullabies books. I think the Brahms. Um, the reason it is to make people impossible watch that. Oh, to make more people possible. What is wrong with wrinkles on humans? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to continue on. Yeah, we were talking about wrinkles on people's faces. With cartoons, we don't even have to worry about. Well, actually, yeah, we do. And I was listening to a celebrity who has been doing interviews related to that, and she said that most people think about an old woman. The same thing had crossed my mind too, and it's true because of the stereotypes in movies. When you think of an old, scary woman, you do think of a wicked witch. But let's get back to the marketing part. So my daughter taught me the life lesson of the marketing of these companies just repeating the same movies over and over again, which that's all Disney was doing. They probably could have gone down the same path if DVDs and if DVDs and VHS tapes and uh CDs were still popular, which people do still use. They do, though, they will still use that stuff. It's my understanding they will and have a little collection of things. However, the other side of it is online, buying digital assets. Well, when you buy digital assets, you're not actually getting a product. You're not getting a product. You're getting a monthly payment, is what you're getting. And so, for example, if Disney is trying to sell you an online collection of their movies that you can have access to, you don't get a tangible product. It's just like the big fail with Adobe with Photoshop and those traditional companies that charged a whole lot of money. They tried that and it didn't work. People didn't want to make the monthly payment. I know I didn't. They were charging like $50 to $70 a month to have access to Photoshop on the internet. And the problem that I found, I think I might have, did I do 1 month of it maybe? I think that I could test try it for a month and then cancel. And I may have done that at the time when I had access to it, and I didn't like it because what was happening, I was getting the throttling, and the throttling and buffering has been going on for a long, long time, ever since I started YouTube. Well, and I've had the throttling and buffering, so when I got onto YouTube, it's just something that just happens. And so, so cartoons and things like that you hear a person's voice. Is that voice actually even them? Or did they make a replica of a person's voice? So if you hear a voice in a movie or something like that, it might sound like a celebrity's voice, but is it actually their voice? Or is it someone else who did the voice? You just don't know. And you don't know how old the person is. The person could be anywhere from 18 years old. It could be a child, 18 up to 90 years old. I mean, I've never actually, that's not true. I have heard of old people. There's some of the what show was it, Hazel or Mrs. Kravitz in Bewitched? And she kind of has a lot. I've noticed a lot of the grayscale TV shows from the analog days. A lot of the women, they have kind of high pitched voices like this, and they talk like this in a really high pitched voice, almost kind of like a Munchkin childlike voice. And I've always wondered, what is the era with that? I don't know if anyone who has insight to Hollywood and or celebrities, I agree, they don't have all the answers. They're not the smartest people in the world. I'm not going to say that. They're smart individually outside of Hollywood, but I mean within inside of Hollywood. Maybe they have some insight as to what they were doing because that would be interesting to hear about, related to the era of the old women who are in their 70s talking like this. It's kind of like in the Waltons too, the sisters. I don't know that they had as high pitched voices, but I don't know that Aunt B did, but some of those shows like on Hazel and Mrs. Kravitz on Bewitched, they kind of talk like this, a little. And even Lucy, I don't think Ethel did, but some of the older women, or Father Knows Best, maybe it was Father Knows Best. Some of the older women talk almost like in a child voice, and I have to wonder if it's because, I think it's because they feel like they're being treated like a child, maybe. I don't know. So, well, I think I'm going to end this at this point, and when I have another question to ask, I will pop on with another question. And so thank you guys for watching, and we'll probably see you soon.